Hey guys, Jordan with TYT Politics. Now let me tell you something. If you planned on a Friday afternoon / night and going out, getting drunk, doing some stuff, I got a different plan for you. I'm going to be doing several Facebook Lives from East Chicago, Indiana. Get your cooler now, get your Mike's Hard Lemonade, whatever you got. You know, whatever you want to drink, eat, because I'm going to be live a few times over the next few hours. I'm in East Chicago, Indiana. If you're just tuning in, this is my second time here. The first time I covered a low-income housing complex, West Calumet complex, that was basically having a forced eviction. All the residents, they were demolishing the complex because they had 218 times the level of lead, 218 times more than is the allowable level of lead. I still find the allowable level of lead to be ridiculous. 0 is the allowable in water or soil. But I covered that. The most important thing that came away from that experience was the EPA official on the ground told me the water was safe. And that was in August. He told me no problem with the water. This is different than Flint. Well, in December, while I was in Standing Rock, I saw that news reports that they had found lead in the water here. And it made me want to come back. So I got back here last night. If you haven't seen my investigation, I would go watch that either after this. I basically did my own private testing at a nice woman's home. The EPA came in to test her home. They only tested her sink water and the outside ground soil. They did not test her home water heater and her shower. And from the comments of the video, apparently all of you viewers are plumbers, so you were telling me I was wrong. We sent it to a private lab. That home water heater is 2 years old. 2 years old. Home water heaters that are 2 years old, they don't have discolored yellow/brown things come out of it. That's not normal. And we also, because I was there, we saw different particles flying around in there. So, you know what? In life, I'd rather go for it. So we sent it to the lab. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I happen to think some things are going to be found there. And I think the EPA is going to have to answer to why it is that an online news journalist was able to go into a home and find possible lead, possible bacteria, when they were already there and they chose not to test it. We also tested a home across the street that they refused to test at all. So we'll see. But I want to start with today. I'm here with Reverend Cheryl Rivera, sorry. Mm-hmm. And we talked before. You're a really strong leader in the community, and you've been organizing people. I think in a lot of these cases, in Flint, in East Chicago, Detroit, a lot of the people are, frankly, either not as educated as other people, or they've been lied to. So first, we got to inform people what's going on and then organize them.
Absolutely.
Tell me what's been going on since we last spoke.
Well, we've been very much involved in organizing of the community. Folks in the West Calumet who are in public housing in zones 2 and 3, those are the homeowners.
I want to cut you off. Just so you know, in East Chicago, there's Zone 1, there's Zone 2, and there's Zone 3. Zone 1 was where I was the first time I was here. That's that complex I told you about where they forced everybody out. That's Zone 1. That had the most contamination. Zone 2 and 3 are more residential homes, things like that they recently started testing. The EPA recently started testing. Go ahead.
Okay. So that organizing the folks is the most important. Helping them understand how that they do have the power, that they cannot sit back and rely upon the public officials to tell them that everything is okay or tell them what to do. So we've been organizing them so that they can find their own voice and putting together some demands so that they get some remediations and some remedies. The first thing is we wanted the mayor to declare the entire Superfund site an emergency declaration. That was very difficult because at first he rebuffed us in a couple of meetings, and then he decided that he would do that. He has sent a letter to Pence, Governor Pence, who is the vice president-elect, and to
the governor who didn't find time in his schedule to come down here. This was first revealed in July.
Yes,
so, right.
Yes.
Didn't come down here.
He has not. He has not. He sent some of his emissaries, I understand, and he provided $100,000 toward helping the folks in West Calumet, while the state of Indiana sits on a $2 billion surplus. That's another matter altogether. And so organizing other folks in the West Calumet complex and in zones 2 and 3, which are the homeowners who had basically felt that they had been neglected. Those folks have bought homes. Some of them have been there 30, 40, 50 years, did not know that they were sitting on contaminated land, didn't know that they had bought that. And so there's a big...
One thing that I find interesting, the woman I interviewed last night that I took the samples,
Yeah.
she was right by DuPont.
Mm-hmm.
DuPont.
Yeah,
DuPont,
DuPont.
sorry. Three houses down. Nothing in her home contract. I mean, there was no disclaimers for any of these people when they purchased homes. People were moving into the West Calumet complex after it was announced, the lead, and weren't told.
Yeah. After they already announced that they're going to be forced evacuating.
There are people.
They were still taking people.
They're still taking people in, so we have been told. And why they're taking people in and everybody's being forced to evacuate makes no sense to us. Mm-hmm. So that it's very important, though, for the folks to feel that they have the power and to demand. This water thing is a whole nother issue that we knew existed, but now we're not sure how the city is going to address it. We are concerned that everybody in the Superfund site gets Medicare for life. Medicare for all for life is another thing that we've asked for. The homeowners are asking for a buyout, just as was done in Love Canal. Now, what the mayor has done in that way is he has sent a letter to Senator Donnelly and to our Congressman of Visclosky. But the community still has to push, regardless of what letters are written. The people who are affected still have to push to make sure that that action, in fact, happens. The other thing that we have done is that we are concerned that the city provides filters for the water, and that there are air filters as well, because some of those folks that you've talked to have complained about the air quality, and it's just ridiculous. One of them, Maritza, has very much complained. She's lost a lot of people in her family. She has multiple health problems, and a lot of folks in her family have died.
I want to stop you for a second. So I don't want to make this about me, but I just want you to understand, because the video's not up yet. I interviewed a woman yesterday named Maritza. She is 53, wonderful, wonderful woman. She's lived here almost all her life. She pretty much, I think it took about a minute and a half for her to read out the list of her illnesses. She has had just about every illness you could think of. She's not a hypochondriac, like these are documented illnesses. She's had surgeries and procedures, and all her life, all she could think of was, why did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? Right. And then you expanded to her family. Her brother died young. Her sister died young. Her parents died young. So either this family
and all of them lived in that house.
Yes. Either this family is the Kennedys of healthcare, or something caused it. So that interview is going to go up. That's probably the only interview I've ever done where I almost cried. I think I did a little bit. It was very emotional. And why I'm bringing that up is they didn't test their home.
No, they didn't test their home. They didn't test the water. No, they didn't.
They tested the home across the street, but they didn't test our home. Right. I wonder why, but go ahead.
I wonder why too, because one of the things that we've asked is that all of the homes be tested. We are concerned that this might even be citywide. And so
I just want to ask Thomas something, and I didn't answer. This is Thomas Franks. He's been on the ground here, environmental activist, expert, has been involved with everything from fighting some BP things to other things. You're not well liked by the pro-fossil fuel crowd. But
that's a good thing.
I want to point out, because you were mentioning demanding filters, but if our test finds bacteria, it's no guarantee that putting a filter on sink water is going to stop lead or bacteria.
Right. We have such an old infrastructure that has a lot of impacts, and so trying to deal with all the pathways and all the problems that are here. I mean, got to remember, this is a city that claimed to be the most industrial city in the world for the entire 20th century.
East Chicago,
Indiana, and we basically, what I want to say is, we're just leaving. We're just leaving Christmas. And we think of, Santa's workshop. Well, this is a city that claimed to be the workshop of America. But the workshop of America has a lot of toxic secrets. And to get that claim, to get that identity of being the workshop of America.
Can you explain to the audience like how it got that?
Yeah.
What were the industries?
We have the largest steel mill or blast furnace in the Western Hemisphere. Right now that's called ArcelorMittal. It used to be Inland Steel. ArcelorMittal has consolidated all the steel here. So we used to be Steel Town for most of the 20th century. But in 2007, BP moved its refinery out of Whiting and into East Chicago. So now we have the largest steel facility, integrated steel mill, and one of the largest in the world. And we also have the largest tar sands refinery in the country in East Chicago. We, in the last 8 years, have awarded these industries over $200 million in tax incentives. Well, that's money that could have gone to the infrastructure here. So
The infrastructure of 6-decade-old pipes?
yeah, 6 to 8 decades of old pipes that run through this city. We're like many old urban areas. It's kind of like we have a, with lead pipes, it's like a recall on a product. But nobody wants to go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, you've made a mistake, you're poisoning people. We'll recall a vehicle, but we won't recall a pipe that is lead, a lead pipe, that people are consuming water through. It's part of their daily consumption. And I think we need to have something. We'll also recall leaded paint, but we're not recalling leaded pipes. There's a lot of issues here. The government and the industry have not come together to solve this problem. They want to obfuscate. We knew for 20 years that this infrastructure was old and needed to be replaced. Every time we got a new water management director, they've articulated that we need to replace this immediately. It's an urgent situation. And it's been carried forward again and again, and it hasn't been addressed.
But it gets worse. And correct me if I'm wrong. The first complex we covered, the West Calumet complex, I mean, the city was aware, and the EPA was aware, that that area had very high levels of lead dating back to the 1980s. And they were building new schools.
Yes.
In that area.
Absolutely.
We're talking about our children.
Absolutely.
In that area, black children.
Black children.
As of the 2000s, a new school was built, right?
Yes.
So I'm not accusing anyone of manslaughter or murder, but I'm saying it was known that this area had environmental toxins, and they were still building, still moving people in.
Yes, and it was known that there was a lead refinery under on that property. It's a 50-acre site. They had to tear down the lead refinery to build a housing complex. They knew it was a lead refinery there. And so when the EPA started testing, imagine testing a site, 50-acre site, and only 3% of that site has low levels of lead. Dang, over the last 40 years, EPA seemed to have 100% hit on those 3% of the where lead isn't in high levels. 97% of that property is very high in lead. So it wasn't until this year that we did a comprehensive test across the whole 50 acres that we now found out that it's 97% of the land is high in lead. And as you recorded, some of those high levels are at 91,000 parts per million. That's 228 times the allowable limit.
What's the normal allowable limit?
All right, so the EPA and the federal guidelines says 400 parts per million, and we're 91,000. Now, if we were in California or in other states,
why did I hear in Flint it was 15,000?
well, you're talking about drinking water. Okay. This is in soil.
Soil.
Okay. So, and that becomes that's a problem for us because we have multiple pathways in which lead, arsenic, and other heavy metals are attacking the community. And this is the way I've kind of described it. We've had industries cannibalizing our populations here and our neighborhoods. This is the third neighborhood in the last 2 decades that has been torn down because of contaminants from industry. And instead of regulating those industries more stringently, we decided to push the people out. And we have not decided to regulate. And that's one of the main problems. There's a reason why we have such a heavy concentration of industries in this community is because Well, it's a free-for-all for regulations. Indiana has very relaxed environmental regulations.
You're giving them too much credit.
And-
They have radical environmental regulations. But
Yes.
I want to ask you something, but real quick, I'll point out, I'm going to invent the term, corporate environmental welfare.
Yeah.
Let's look at what happened in Flint. They changed to the Flint River. Guess who had a problem with it? GM.
Yeah.
GM
Yeah.
said, we can't use this water for our parts. And they switched them off back to Detroit way before they actually did it for actual human being people.
Right.
And GM is part of why Flint River is such a toxic dump zone. So it's this dehumanization. Corporations will help you,
Right.
$1 billion tax cuts, this and that. Flint, Snyder gave $2 billion in tax cuts. You know how much money would have been saved from switching to Detroit to the Flint River? $2 million.
Right.
And that's what brings me to my question, because I did a video the other day that I said Flint is straight up environmental racism. And whenever you say racism and you put it in bold-faced times, they say you're crazy, you're just a race hustler, this and that. I think it's the same thing
This
here.
is definitely
Because
environmental racism.
I want to ask you,
Absolutely.
to the people who disagree with me, do you see this happening in Bel Air? Do you see this happening in LA? Do you see this happening on the Upper East Side of Manhattan? The nice part, the Riverwalk in Chicago?
No,
I
they
don't
don't.
see that. And there are poor white people being affected too.
Right.
It's low income, black, Latinos, formerly middle class. I think that needs to be pointed out, because it's
It
not
is.
just environment, it's racism.
There is racism, and it's structural, absolutely. And it appears that, and when you look across the country, wherever these mega industries have violated people and destroyed, there are black, brown, red, yellow, and poor people who live there, because we are considered expendable and we're not valued. The land is more valuable than we are. And this is the problem that we have here. So how do we deal with this to get people to understand that race, space, and place, they are in fact connected, okay? And so that we have to redeem the people, and we have to redeem the land and hold our public officials and the corporations accountable. That's the piece here in East Chicago that has to be reopened. We have to bring back to the table those corporations who settled with this $26 million settlement to remediate the land.
Can you explain that?
Okay.
What the settlement was?
The settlement was $26 million to remediate the land in zones 1 and 3, just the land. And that is not even beginning to address the problem. You've looked over a number of homeowners. There are over 1,000 homeowners in zones 1 and 2. And those folks have to be made whole. Everybody has to be made whole. So that what we've said to the mayor is that bring those folks back to the table who really did this. We want Anaconda, DuPont, all of those who were involved in destroying the land to come back, okay? Because that has to be reopened. That school, Carrigosh School, owes $14 million on that school that they can't use now, okay? And so that has to be settled. That lawsuit has to be reopened so that the communities in zones 1, 2, and 3, and even Nicosia, we found out that there is a senior building that's very close to the Superfund site. And we've got seniors who are testing high for lead. That has to be addressed. They're considered part of the vulnerable population. What are we going to do there? And as a matter of fact, they're living in a building that has been deemed by the inspectors of the city as unstable, unsafe, and it's scheduled for demolition in March. We're also asking that they get an abatement for rent. They shouldn't have to pay rent. They're living in a building that is contaminated with mold, rodents, roaches, and we believe lead. The thing that we've asked the mayor then is to sign the agreement so that that building can be tested, because the seniors have tested positive. And so this problem of lead and arsenic in the soil, lead in the water, it's spreading across the city. We have some major concerns that we may have a citywide problem, particularly in terms of the water, and we've asked for that test the entire city.
How about this? How about stop charging? They've only tested 40 homes, but the woman that I went to last night,
yes.
poor woman, she's recently a widow.
Yeah.
She came here from Mexico, did everything the right way, and she's being charged for lead contaminated water. So are all of the people in Flint being charged with lead contaminated water. If they contaminated my home on Long Island, not only would they not charge me for it, they'd come bring me smart water cases.
I know that's right. That's for sure.
So
that's for sure.
And they're raising the rates.
And they're raising the rates.
By
and
30%.
That makes no sense whatsoever. Why should the citizens pay for something that they didn't do? Why are we having to pay to fix something that we didn't do? This is absolutely ridiculous. And again, it's happening because this city is predominantly brown and black and poor.
Guys, if you have questions, comments, bring them on so we could get it to you.
Imagine for a second that you've gone through 300 years of slavery. You've moved to the north for jobs. You've had to deal with redlining, and you've been forced into certain neighborhoods where some neighborhoods you can't move to, and other neighbors you can't. And now you're faced with the first home that your family's ever owned in the last 400 years, obviously, because of a lot of issues. It's now on a lead refinery, or it's highly contaminated. And so what we're facing right now is environmental redlining. They've hit one issue after another where they've been given the worst quality housing, the worst chance to survive. Now, this neighborhood, in East Chicago, our median home value is 1/4 the national home value. And a lot of that has to do with the environmental situation. But in this Superfund site, it's even lower. So where the national home value is around $200,000 or $217,000, in East Chicago, the median home value is $55,000. And in West Calumet or in Calumet, it's down by $25,000. They're losing wealth. And so this community, these communities of color, are having to struggle against all the forces that our society puts against them to build their family wealth. They can't keep up their home. They can't retire on that. They can't send their kids to college because they can't build that kind of wealth.
But there goes what I think is really going on here and in Flint and in Detroit. So, benefit of the doubt that Flint, there's also water problems in Detroit. Benefit of the doubt, it's just gross negligence. It's not intentional. I'll give them that. Well, all these responses, they don't really make it seem like these are city officials or governors that really want these people to stay in those communities. You look in Detroit, the water problems they've had there, I mean, they're starting to try to gentrify that place right up. They're trying to bulldoze these low-income areas. You're looking in Flint. What did you say? How many people left in 6 months?
I mean, it's been several thousand, and then they're under their 100,000, and as soon as the census in 2020 happens, they get swallowed by the county around them, and then they just bulldoze the city.
So in English, Flint ceases to be a city if they go under 100,000 people in 2020. So it's kind of like, oh, sorry, we poisoned you. If you want to leave, go ahead. We're going to keep charging you expensive water bills. We're not going to give you any additional Medicare, Medicaid. So part of me feels like this is kind of like a little con job. All right, you're not on the part of the cities. I don't know about the EPA, to pretty much ethnically cleanse.
Well, that is a question. It's a real concern because Calumet has the largest concentration of black folks in the city. So I'm very much concerned about that. And that's one of the things I've asked. When they leave, or if they get a buyout, okay, because we've asked for a buyout at the pre-Superfund value of the homes.
This is the zone 1 that they got
this
forced
is zone
out. Yeah.
2 and 3. Zone 2.
Okay.
Those homeowners, we're asking for buyout at pre-Superfund value of the homes. Okay? So that if you move all of those folks, all of those 1,000 families plus, and you've got another 1,300 folks, families, between 1, 2, and 3, that's a large segment of our community. And it's the largest black segment. So the question I have is, what are you doing with that? Will you remediate the land for white folks to come in, okay? Because will you make the soil clean? Will you take it down to native level? And then it'll be okay to rebuild. And who will you rebuild for? That's the question. Okay? What's the pathway back? One of the things we've asked is, what's the pathway back for folks who want to come back? Okay? That question has not even been answered. It's just dead silence when you ask that. How will they come back? And so it will change the demographics of this city. And it's strange that the communities that have been demolished and destroyed, Marquette is the neighborhood around the BP plant, predominantly Marktown, predominantly Mexican. The community that was lost on Kennedy, it was a black community. What was that?
The Brickyard.
The Brickyard was black community. Calumet,
Black community.
it's predominantly black community. Okay, and it will change the demographics. So it makes people think there's some insidious plot. It kind of looks like it. It just, because it's happening everywhere. It's happening here. It's happening in Flint. It's happening in Detroit. So is there this intent to take back the cities?
I just got a message about Milwaukee next.
Take back the cities. And when you look, there are these water problems all over the country. So is there some intent to take back all the cities and to drive out the people who are poor and the people of color? It looks like it to me. And it looks like environmental and structural racism. That's what it looks like, and that's what it feels like.
Any comments or questions?
Not many yet.
Okay. I also think that there's an element. So I don't know if you ever watched the show House. House was a popular show, and it was a pretty irritable, not pleasant to be around, but brilliant doctor. And the whole thing was, beginning of the show, he gets a patient, and they're terminal, and there's this intricate search for what caused it, and it goes back to childhood and all this. Well, now all of a sudden, I keep hearing from people, I just talked to the person down the street, and we always knew we thought it was a coincidence. You have cancer at a young age, or you have upper respiratory issues, or you have this, or you have this, and now it's kind of playing detective on what caused it. And we talked about who's going to make the homeowners whole, and who's going to pay for Maritza's medical bills?
Absolutely.
Who's going to atone for Anisha, who I'm interviewing tonight? Keisha, who I'm interviewing tonight, never had a health problem. She moved to the site. She had to have a hysterectomy at, I think, in her 20s.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
There's people in this community that,
are sick and
have been sick for years.
And I think you're going to be talking to one next very soon.
Yeah.
He has.
Byron Duke Florence has also had issues as well, and he'll explain those to you and share with you a lot about his neighborhood and the people that he knew and what he did.
He grew up.
And he also grew up there. Yeah, there is a huge issue of how do you make this kind of community whole, because when you allow a polluter to pollute, and for as long as they have been, there are all these cascading effects. And so they like to limit their liability as quickly and as soundly as possible. It's kind of like when Enbridge spilled into the Kalamazoo River. Before the residents even knew what was happening, Enbridge was going house to house with pizzas, offering free pizzas and signing a disclaimer, not to sue. And people didn't know what they were signing. Well, that's what's happening here, is that they're trying to get this shut down as quickly as possible before the issues bleed out. Like, well, we got $14 million that the city owes on a school that's now been shut down. There's all these other health issues. There's also the fact that we've remediated some of these properties 5 years ago, and now they've been recontaminated.
Right.
Well, the issue there is because there's a high water table at the ground level, and maybe the water table is moving some of this product off of DuPont's property or in the neighborhood. So there are a lot of issues, and then we have a lot of pathways to poison here. In which Dr. Lamphere had said is, we've made it very easy to get sick in a community like this because we have so much industry and so many poisons being released into the air, water, and land that it's a real difficulty.
Very difficult.
But it's been difficult to seek justice here and to find the responsible parties and to have them be held responsible.
And I think part of that was because people were valuing jobs, and they were willing to suffer the consequences of jobs. But now we don't have the jobs. We just have the consequences of all of the toxic waste, okay, of all of that. I never had asthma until I came here. I'm too old to have developed that. But I have it. I have it. I have it. A lot of people here are sick from various things because of the environment, and there has to be, the people have to be made whole.
Well,
They have to be made whole.
my last question is this. You know, Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail said something that I think, you know, the right-wingers say, you're a crazy communist and all this, but I think it made it acceptable for people who felt it to say, yeah, you're right. Healthcare is a right, right? Healthcare is a right. Well, how about the right to know what's going on in your environment?
Absolutely.
How about the right
Absolutely.
to know, you know, the area you're moving into is right next to a lead smelting plant, or lead emitters, or DuPont, and you know what could possibly come from that. It seems like business interests and moving people in and all that went above basic,
Absolutely.
basic human dignity and protecting
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
And that comes from the you know the state, the federal level to the state level. And frankly, I mean, I think the EPA is in cover your ass mode. Most journalists wouldn't say that,
Yeah,
but let's
yeah,
keep it real.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the EPA, you said it best. They test the same 3 areas have 3%. They didn't test the water heater
Right,
in this home
right,
yesterday. I
right.
found what looked like piss. So what's the steps forward? What's the steps forward?
Our steps forward are to continue to organize the people and to press very hard to make sure that demands are followed. So we're fighting at the local level. Now we're going to be moving to the state level and the federal level. Everybody has to be held accountable. And the corporate level. Get those corporations, because they have a big part in this. We want the people to be made whole. That's exactly what we want. And we're not stopping until that happens. That everybody is held accountable, from the mayor on up to eventually President Trump.
And as we move from the city level to the state and federal, we can use a lot of other coalitions to join
Absolutely,
us
absolutely.
and to help us
Absolutely.
meet those
Absolutely.
challenges with getting our legislators to respond in a positive way.
Absolutely. And we're using some of the precedents. You know, we're not fighting for things and asking for things that have not happened before. Love Canal. Okay? Folks were bought out. We're asking for the same thing. Libby, Montana. Medicare for all for life. We're asking for the same thing for the folks who are here and the folks who have lived here. Because the other thing is that there's thousands of people who've been affected over the course of time. Okay? And so we're going to fight for that. We're going to fight for the emergency declaration. We're going to fight for Medicare for all for life. We're going to fight for protections for the home owners, and that means buyout. Okay? And we're going to fight for a pathway back home for those who want to come back. That's what we're going to fight for. And we're going to fight for clean water. We're going to fight for clean water. That has to be addressed for the entire city. And look at other vulnerable populations like the seniors. Okay? So we're not stopping until we win. We're not stopping until we win.
I got a few people asking what they can do to help.
Let you guys. What can they do to help?
Well, right now we're just forming still as a local groups with the community. You'll find us on Facebook. It's called the Community Strategy Group, and we're going to be looking to very soon to raise some funds to be able to send people downstate to the Capitol, writing campaign to request him to declare this a disaster area.
Dear Mr. Pence.
Dear Mr. Pence campaign. We can always use help on that level. Also, we can use help when we go to the federal level. We expect to kind of confront the federal government as well. And so right now we're not tooled to address a lot of the issues that we have to address, but we're going to get tooled.
Okay.
And we can use
all kind of help. And if they want to call me, they can call me 219-801-4872. That's my cell 24/7. They can email me.
Say it slower so they
219-801-4872. And you can email me at rev.rivera, RIVERA @live.com.
And I'll put all that info under the video. I got one more thing to say because I know President Obama, he's always watching me live.
Absolutely.
You know, I see all the media right now doing their puff pieces on President Obama's legacy. I don't, you know, I have my thoughts on him, but CNN's doing a thing on New Year's Day and it's all just vile. But how about just coming down here?
I can add something to that. President Obama, you and I met back in 2004. You were the keynote speaker at the Gamaliel Foundation. I'm a Gamaliel organizer. We are trained under the same banner. Mike Kruglet was my mentor. He was your mentor. You were my keynote speaker at an African American Leadership Commission luncheon that we had in Chicago. You know what we're doing. We're organizing people to fight for justice, for right to live in a clean environment. I need you to come here. You're from Chicago. I was part of MAC. You know what MAC is. I need you as a community organizer to come, let your voice be heard, and make sure that the people in East Chicago get justice. That's one of the things you can do before you leave office. Obama, organizer. From one organizer to another.
Hallelujah. All right, guys. If you like what you see, if you want to learn more, I'm going to be doing a couple more interviews today. And we're going to do some of them on Facebook. So check it out. And you can see the videos I've already done, youtube.com/TYTpolitics. Thanks.